today's World Insight. Staggered school reopening in China. Are students and teachers ready for the challenges and troubles ahead?
Part of our education is we're educating students towards the world today in an effort to keep them and their families safe.
And the ups and downs of international education and closed borders amid a raging pandemic. Here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing. Today we are going to bring you a special program on the starting of the new semester in schools across China. Starting this Saturday, that is August the 29th, the schools in Beijing will gradually begin their autumn semester. We could also see many other schools across the country. Senior high schools will open first, while primary and junior high school will start their new school year separately on August 29th, September the 1st, and September the 7th, respectively. And colleges in the Chinese capital will decide on their own schedule for students to check in or register. The new semester begins after China has basically contained the coronavirus spread. Classes were mostly online across the country in the first half of this year due to the pandemic, though. Meanwhile, for other countries like the United States, it could be a very different story, as many classes will still only resume online. So how will the overall situation and the differences have its impact on international students going to the U.S. and Europe? And any advice for Chinese students stranded abroad on how to do well despite the dark circumstances? Meanwhile, what does all of these special circumstances mean for education and its evolving picture? Let's loop in our panelists, a very strong panel of educators from all over China and from different parts of the world. On the beginning of the new semester for schools in China, in Beijing, we are having Ray Yang, teacher at a high school affiliated with Renmin University of China. Wang Yan, senior specialist of National Institute of Education Science. Mr. Memo Mata, assistant principal of Beijing International Bilingual School. Last but not least, Wang Shi, who is the assistant to the principal at Tsinghua University High School and director of college counseling. We have a very strong panel of educators. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for your work, all of yours, over the past 8 months since the beginning of the pandemic. I know you've been working a lot and making utmost effort. But it's already the beginning of the new semester, so let me ask you how to make sure the students are going to put themselves together and be able to function in a normal classroom. Ms. Yang, shall I begin with you?
I have to say that the past half year has been a very challenging time for everyone, especially the students, because they are, on a much larger extent, more reliable on their own rather than the schools. So it's a drastic change of learning style for them. And from my personal opinions, the parents and the students are more nervous than the teachers.
You mean you're not? Seeing the students coming back to school after 8 months, of course they were, temporary coming back earlier, but very short.
Exactly. Well, the school has given us tasks to prepare teaching materials both online and offline to be fully equipped for any more changes in the foreseeable future.
Right.
And there's a concept that I really like. It's about adaptability. It's the ability to cope and receive changes and unpredictable changes in the future. So I think that's what we're all getting ready and used to.
Mr. Wang Shi, what about for you? Tsinghua University, just a high school, just like where Ms. Yang comes from, Renmin University affiliated high school, are some of the best known high schools here in China. So tell me more about how you are going to see, the most talented young people coming back to the campus and how you guys are preparing for it.
The most important thing is the security and the safety of the students. Well, we have a lot of, we already reopened several months ago, so
Right.
like after first period, and so we have experience in coping with all to precaution about this kind of in this uncertain time. That definitely we keep the uncertain in very low level that we can have this kind of gate security and everything ready, and to keep the students back in a safe environment and the situation.
Are teaching and interaction of the students now being done in a different way, let's just say compared to before the pandemic?
Well, definitely it's very important to ensure the safety and security of the students and teachers. But after going through the pandemic over the past 8 months, I believe that the schools and teachers and students are now getting better prepared for any similar crisis in the future. And similar to the concept that just had been used by Ms. Yang Rui, I think the crisis, one of the gains that we have had from the crisis is resilience. So the students and teachers are going more resilient with all the exercise of the pandemic prevention, the control protocols that has been exercised once again. And over the past few months, the students and teachers are now very familiar with the knowledge and the techniques to cope with the challenge from the public health crisis.
We see teachers have all become expert in how to do the temperature check and looking at all the important apps and helping the parents to prepare everything. Having said that, though, Mr. Mata, you are laughing, and I'm sure you're also practicing it, even though you're working for a bilingual school out of the China public education system. But I'm sure your students coming from all over China and beyond are also having to face the same challenges, and therefore you have same solutions?
We are a K-12 school. So as everyone here is aware, there's different standards to open up, I shouldn't say standards, however, different times and different requirements. So for us as a K-12 school, that's a bit challenging. We do have staff, there's a lot of crossover. However, we do have a clear-phased approach to process planned that's been planned since last term when the pandemic broke out. I think what this has allowed us to do is create kind of a roadmap, an action plan. And we, like our colleague said here, are very adaptable now. It's very interesting to see how the students are going to be able to adapt with so many changes.
Yes.
Because in the world of COVID-19, we don't get to dictate what's going to happen, the virus does. So I believe that part of our education is we're educating students towards the world today in an effort to keep them and their families safe. So through that, their adaptability is more practiced, I would say. And so those are some of the challenges. And I think it's too soon to tell the overall outcome of all of this.
Yes.
But every school has a very clear plan to open up, followed by government regulations, government guidelines. And so I think every school here follows that through and through. And I think the challenge is more for the K-12 schools are basically the different standards the government is asking us to meet for the different age groups. But as a unified group, we do have a committee to do this.
Right. You know, you talk about a lot of qualities, whether it's adaptability or resilience or new curiosity about the world. You know, before the pandemic, many thought, you know, the human beings are capable of everything, and we are going to Mars, we're doing everything. And the biggest issue is geopolitics, but it's not. It's one virus, and it changes the world. So how is that going to impact, you know, the students' understanding about what they're learning, you know, what the world is like, and what should they aspire to become in the future even? Ms. Wang Yan, tell me more about, as an educator and as a researcher in education. How is this going to set the stage for the students?
So first of all, it's about the curriculum, education content. I believe the sequence of the priorities has changed a little bit now.
Tell me more about it.
For example, people now prioritize much more the health and the life education than before. The second is people see the more importance the parents and the school collaboration, because over the past 8 months, when most of the students in this world engage in home-based learning, they have to rely on the parents-school collaboration for effective learning. And also another thing very important is utilization of the technology. Even though when students switch back from the online learning to offline learning back on campus, still the technology will play an increasingly larger role in the delivery education and also in learning. It brings much more quality education resources into the classrooms, and also will broaden the horizons of students' learning substantially.
We have seen a lot of schools all over this country trying to use the most, shall we say, professional and model teachers' classes as video materials. But that brings us another question about what about the teaching staff of ordinary high schools and middle schools? What's going to be their role now as a result of the adaptability to technology? So these are fascinating questions, Ms. Yang.
I like to see COVID-19 from a more positive light, because for one thing, as a teaching staff myself, I see higher quality in teaching actually than traditional classroom teachings. For one thing, teachers are spending more time preparing the materials than before. We watch our language, we watch our outfit, and we do put more effort on making sure that the content we transfer to students are of the highest quality and that are dense and effective enough too. We use different platforms like Zoom, ClassIn, Tencent, all different platforms to make sure that everyone can connect to our online teaching. And another positive thing that is brought out by COVID-19 is that students have more control over what they learn. Because in a classroom, they're sitting there, they have to listen whatever the teaching is saying. But now with the online teaching, they can speed up their lessons. They can repeat what they listened previously, and they can also jump and select what they want to focus on. So in that sense, the students are actually having a more efficient classroom compared to traditional teaching. As a mental health counselor, I'd also like to mention that because of the pandemic, the society has a much higher awareness of the importance of mental health, and that is a very important thing, because we do see students and parents having mental health problems before, but not aware of it. And change in the past half year has somehow, in a strange way, reduced some social stigma against mental health problems. And I think that is a pretty big social improvement.
Talking about mental health, I also work as a national ambassador on mental health in China. That's, of course, a philanthropical work. I don't want to advertise for myself, but it's really becoming ever more important as we speak since the pandemic. Mr. Mata, what about for you? You work for a K-12 school. So you have students both inside China and overseas. How does that work? The technology is transforming your part of the education.
Right. So what we never lose sight of are our teaching standards. Here in our school, we have very high teaching standards, as I'm sure all schools do. So we actually have a way to use Zoom and the online classes as a form of evaluation of the teachers as well. Yeah. So the teachers are more proactive to deliver the best lessons they can for our students. Moreover, it's technology and the situation over the past few months has been bittersweet. What it's allowed the primary school and kindergarten families to do are to kind of come together in their child's education. Mom and dad really do support the online learning and get their child in front of the computer, help them log on, and so on. So it's really a blessing for this younger students to interact with their parents and have their parents involved. When you are in a class, here we are an IB curriculum here, so IB does tend to allow students to take control of their own learning and learn intrinsically on what interests them. But moreover, you still have that classroom aspect where you're still in a classroom with a teacher, giving you skills and having students explore with the new skills that they learned. Mm-hmm. Online learning has allowed students to take 100% control of their own education. Students that don't learn as quick can go more at their own pace, and students that learn quicker can excel more without having other students holding them back. So in the essence of differentiation, the situation has actually become quite unique and definitely has allowed students to learn at their own pace, intrinsically motivating them to take control of their learning as well. So in that aspect, online learning is bittersweet. It's going to be unique how we're going to continue to incorporate technology as far as we still have students that are overseas. For the international schools or foreign workers, their issues come because their teachers are in different countries, but their students are also in different countries. So technology aside, you have to work with time zones.
That's true. That's very true. There's another extra layer. We're going to talk about that, about the global landscape and how the pandemic is having an impact on that in education through time zones. But Mr. Wang Shi, let me also bring you in about technology. Your school already started a month ago. I'm sure you have already observed some of the latest changes in students' attitude and teaching staff's attitude toward technologies. How it has transformed so far?
Well, I think the teachers should be ready, especially after professional developing this kind of opportunity offered to the teachers after this pandemic, especially the first wave. The second thing that we probably changed some strategy or approach of teaching pedagogy in the classroom practice. Like probably it's also better for us to have more small class size, which means more interaction between teachers and the students. And also it can really increase the possibility of implementing individualized teaching, which means like the student-centered learning. This kind of technology, which hasn't been accomplished, in the past normal education, and also probably we can have more, change in like flipped, learning or flipped teaching, which means students can have more, initiative. That is another thing we can have, to foresee in the future. Generally speaking, in the past, it's not kind of possible. Also, technology can really help us to have more like cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary, like the STEM or STEM as well. So I think it's a challenge, but also it's an opportunity for the educators to think more, and also they can experiment more in order to cope with the coming time.
Sounds totally fascinating what you said, all of you, about how technology is really changing the landscape. But if I could argue on behalf of some whose kids are going to quote-unquote the ordinary high schools or middle schools in China, because you tend to see much larger size classes. They tend to have teachers do not necessarily as academically exciting as, maybe coming from Tsinghua Affiliated High School or Renmin Affiliated High School. And therefore, how do you see the possible divide, Ms. Yang and Mr. Wang, about, the quote-unquote special example schools such as yours? and vis-a-vis the so-called ordinary standard schools in China? Ms. Yang.
Actually, our school, our DFC, has been sharing our teaching materials and education resources nationwide about 10 years ago. We have a platform with our recorded lessons, preparations, examinations, problem sets that are freely accessible to everyone in the country. So it's been an effort that our school has been doing in the past decade. Somehow, this COVID-19 has made this effort really, really important, and it's bring out its significance now.
Great
so
point.
We are continuing to do this. We're dedicated to sharing the resources that we have to everyone in the country, to everyone who needs good education. I think this is also creating a better opportunity for teaching staffs to share our knowledge and our experiences together across the country. There's better chance for teacher training, and the courses, the lessons are free. They're better accessible to everyone.
Still to come on World Insight with Qian Wei. The ups and downs of international education with closed borders amid a raging pandemic. After the break.
Chinese students these days are not just thinking about China, they're also thinking about their global prospect in a way, their future. And meanwhile, we also see international students coming into China, whether at university or even at high school level. What's going to happen with COVID-19? Because obviously we cannot travel as freely as we used to be. How would that work? This is a really messy picture, but as educator, you have to work with this mess and bring the best to your students. That's the challenge, isn't it, Mr. Mata?
I've been in education in China for 15 years. And for 15 of those years, the USA was the #1 destination for the students in the bilingual schools wanting to go abroad, so, UK being the second. So what this has done, the pandemic, and unfortunately the way the US has handled the situation, there has been an exodus of Chinese students coming back to China. A lot of my former students reconnect with me, asking if I'd like to go out for a cup of tea to share their stories with me. It's kind of like it's an evacuation. It's the only word I can use. So a lot of our Chinese students that were studying in American universities, they're back, they're at home, they're taking the term off to see what happens. They're students that just graduated in May, planning to go to America, now have decided to take a gap year.
Yeah.
Now, so this is going to be a benefit for universities around the world. In the aspect now, people are going to turn to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK, countries that have been able to manage the COVID crisis. Moreover, there's a lot of social unrest in America right now. It's making a lot of Chinese families afraid. I have seen advertisements from other bilingual schools that are specifically advertising against going to the United States and promoting their A-level programs as a pathway into the UK, into the British universities. So that's really how I think COVID has changed the landscape of university admissions. Universities have lost a lot of money from international students over the past 8 months. Moreover, they're losing more money from their own students in America. So, so it's going to be a very dark time for American universities.
Mr. Wang Shi, how do you see, when you are trying to support the students to study abroad, the change? Meanwhile, it's not just about going to universities. It's also about, extra curriculum, the summer camps. It's about student exchanges. It's about cultural exchanges. These are very important components for a curriculum of Chinese students these days. Mr. Wang.
The former one probably is easier because, just like grading students like the past 12 years grade, they probably have different locations. Sometimes they can, like the NYU students, they can study in NYU Shanghai, and also some international like university colleges, so they come to work with some local universities. It's easy. And also for the current 11th grade, rising senior, we really ask them to attend all kinds of webinars, like an online info session and so on at the college fair, so they can really know where they are going to go. And also we ask them to have the plan B, like the backup, like Ms. Mata said, that like maybe they will choose UK universities or some Canadian or Australian as their backup, because like they have their second choice, just in case. But the second question is so hard. We know, all the educators know that is not just like in school classroom that you can learn, but also outside. Yeah. It's not just at home, but also they need to guide it. So like the field trip, extracurricular activities, it's tough. We cannot move them all online. We hope for the best, something will change. The students can really have their personal experience outside in the field, but it's not possible. I think for the education, we probably think different things. We can take advantage of the technology, like, internet or the artificial intelligence and so on, which means like we can have the cross countries or cross continent collaboration with some sister schools or brother schools to work on some project together. We can make the project-based learning, not just like in your own country, but also across the countries. So they also can check the data, so they can exchange ideas. I think the communication is more important. And also another one is the creative ideas also can help you a lot. Next is mutual understanding. That means like, you understand that, the students know it's not possible, but you cannot give up. That's the thing that you really can, benefit from. Next one, if in China, domestically it's possible for the students to have the trip, perfect. We can organize some trips, maybe not like to Italy, but also but instead we can have the students to go to a suburban area of Beijing, also can work out something as well. Just like, the teachers, they have their creative idea to cope with this kind of new challenge.
Well,
that's
teachers are always are always really flexible, isn't it, to deal with what you have and to use what you have. Ms. Yang, I'm sure as a frontline teacher, you know that best.
Well, actually, I was going to say, for every door that you close, there's a window.
Oh, I love that optimistic viewpoint. Go ahead.
In a strange way, I think this pandemic has brought more equality to our education society. We talk about giving equal opportunities to our students, but when we want to give them extracurricular activities or field trips, there's always a cost. And students who come from more wealthy families, they have more access to opportunities. Is a fact. Because of this pandemic, I think students have more equal chances to things now. Top-end scholars, really high-end video conferences can become free. And for anyone who are interested in it, they have access. So in that very strange way, I think this pandemic has brought up more chances for students who want to do things.
Very interesting perspective. Yeah, very interesting perspective. The silver lining probably is even bigger than the cloud itself, it seems, from your analysis.
IB, as an international curriculum, requires students to get a diploma program to do something called CAS, Creativity, Activities, Service. So when you're stuck in a pandemic and you can't join a basketball team or you can't go out and do your community service, so what we have done in the IB community is we have really created a framework for students to do this online, for students to be able to continue their service through online promotion, online marketing, continue to do activities to kind of reflect on things that they do at home as far as working out, practicing basketball shots, and so on. I also do the Edinburgh International Award, so groups of students are going out and doing small camping trips in local communities. So education in itself, the curriculum does require, if you're doing IB or if you're running the Edinburgh International Award program, these are requirements to do after-school activities.
Right. You know, sometimes act locally could also be the solution to an international, a global question, isn't it, as all of you articulated. Ms. Wang, I'm sure you got some inspiration already coming from your colleagues. What's your take about that?
Another emerging phenomena is the differentiation of the learning performance among the students, because home-based learning requires the students to be highly disciplined and resilient and flexible to adapt new teaching methodologies. So for those students who can adapt to these new teaching methodologies, they could perform well or even better. For those who cannot, they lag behind. So there is kind of like emerging or even enlarging the gap of learning performance among the students in many schools, not only in China but also across the world. That's an issue, a challenge that students and the teachers and schools have to address when schools are reopened and when they are back to the classroom and the campus.
Because of the pandemic, technology become more important. And also teaching methods have changed. Schooling and homeschooling are becoming more intertwined. And the role of parents, of family, have becoming much bigger than they used to be. But many wonder whether that should be the way to go, or the schools or the education system should play a bigger role. After all, we see societies in which most of the families have both parents working full-time. This is still the general picture in our world today, particularly in the developed economy. So what's going to be the role of parents from now on? And should the responsibility be shifted to the parents' shoulder?
And I think because of the pandemic, parents are now playing a much bigger role than before. Because for homeschooling, parents are the immediate figures who can see the students and who can supervise them to manage their time and manage their pace in learning. On the policy level, on the school level, on the family level, people are putting emphasis on parent education, which I think should have started a long time ago, because parents are the most important people in a child's development at the early stages.
Most of the parents depend on the school because the parents are full-time workers mostly. For example, if you look at the Chinese society, and you could also see maybe social structural changes as a result, because in most of the families, it's still the mother, the female side, that tends to provide more time and support to children's education. And therefore, it will have an impact on the overall female population's role at the workplace, too. So we're talking about chain effects right now. On that point, do you have any comment about this all possible changes likely to happen because of the increasing role of homeschooling?
So I think that's actually what needs to be changed in our society. It's about father's role. Fathers, I know the daddies are busy with the work, but they do have to at least admit that they're important in their children's development and spend time with them. Spending time is one of the most important things. They can do it remotely, but spending time physically together is really important. And also, there's a difference between spending time with a kid and doing the right thing. Method is also very important too. Saying the right thing, having rational expectations about what you want your child to accomplish, how you want him or she to become. So that all should come into parent training, parent education that our society at large should focus on.
Absolutely fascinating. Mr. Mata, you've been nodding your head. Have you been playing a role in your education, in terms of your family's education?
families, fathers definitely need to step up. We do understand the situation of a working family. It's something all of our colleagues here today need to basically experience and deal with. So what I find when it comes to our Chinese learners is grandma and grandpa are starting to take a bigger role in the children's education here in China. Grandma and grandpa live at home, help take care of the babies when both parents are working. Yeah. So a lot of teachers in my previous schools, they get online and they're engaged with grandma and grandpa who speak no English, but their child is engaged in a bilingual education. So it's really an amazing thing to see the grandparents take a bigger role in the child's education other than just dropping off the baby and picking them up at the end of the school. And I tell myself, I do believe that fathers need to step up. I have two sons right now personally that are in university, one in Flinders and one in Berkeley. They grew up in China, as a matter of fact, and I always, every weekend, I took them to American football. I took them to art. I took them to music, and I was engaged with them. So I do think that a father's role, and of course a mother's role, when you're engaged in this interest, and I do believe that a lot of our Chinese families, because of the pandemic, have had an opportunity to connect with their children on a hobby level, to connect on an interest level. So they find that they have the same interest as their child, so they can do more things together, play more games together, go out to the park together. So it really is, again, a blessing in disguise, bittersweet.
But Mr. Mata, you might want to know it's not just about the weekend anymore. It's kind of about the daily studying. So that's a very different story and a strenuous effort. Having said that, though, Mr. Wang Shi, you want to come in also about the same issue? You know, school vis-a-vis parents, homeschooling, what's it going to be like?
If you want their kids to just like a good learner, maybe, you probably can help the kids to learn this kind of thing in campus, in school. But I think the education is we cultivate students. We want them to know who they are, the first. The second, what they want. The third is what they give, they can give to other people, to society. So that is 3 different levels. But most of the time, I think the school right now, currently, they just don't know how to teach students or let them to find out who they are first. Even though who they are, most of the Chinese students right now, probably they don't know what they want, because like they don't need anything. The parents, even the education, they just follow the track, right? It's like this will go from primary, elementary, and to the middle school, high school, and higher education. They never thought about what they want, let alone what they can give. That is, they always get instead of they can give. They always take. They don't know how to contribute. So that comes to the essence of education. What kind of person you really want to build up? What kind of personality character you want to cultivate? It's not just knowledge and skills. All of things are online. You can select the open courses from the big name university online for free. So the students, they can grab it, let alone the K-12 knowledge. But the skills, personality, this kind of intangible thing, that is the educators should help students to have. Also the parents.
Okay.
They cannot just ask the parents, like the chaperones. So that is not good, because they totally rely on their parents instead of they themselves self-develop.
And first of all, I agree with all these guests that the family education is playing a larger role, because this remote home-based learning, people realize how important it is for parents to take up their responsibility to contribute to the education of their children. And another thing is, I would like to emphasize the government could really play a very effective role by making the timely and effective intervention, like what has happened in China. The Chinese government has acted very soon to establish a national online learning platform after the outbreak that enabled the students across China to access the quality online learning resources. And other things like the pandemic prevention and control protocols, and customize the support for students, disadvantaged students in remote and rural areas, etc. And if we look at the whole society, we also probably could see that the education sector has another responsibility, that is to provide education and child care for probably the early grades students, for those essential workers, because those are the people who have been working very hard days and nights to ensure that our society's our life and also the society is operating during the pandemic. I know that probably now and in the future, we like governments in China, and I know in many parts of the world, like in Australia and Russia, the government has taken a differentiated approach and strategies to make sure that education could be delivered and schools remain partially opened for those children, the essential workers, or those on the front line.
All great points from all of you. I want to thank you enormously for your contribution about a topic of education, a landscape that has been transformed by COVID-19 and our fight against it. Thank you so much for every one of you. Ray Yang, Wang Yan, Memo Mata, Wang Shi. Thank you so much and all the best. We hope it will be a brilliant new semester for everyone here in China. Thank you. A great discussion about education since the pandemic. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.